Bye. My name is Josh Miller. I own Riverstone Kennels, and I've been training gun dogs for more than 16 years. I have field trialed, I've hunt tested, but at the end of the day, I'm a duck hunter. You might find that the duck in our Duck Dogs podcast is spelled uniquely. The UK stands for my British Labs. I love my British Labs. I love what they offer me, both as a part of my family and the high motor in the field. As you're going to find, I have some pretty special dogs. Follow along in our podcast series here as we talk about both in the field hunting and in the field training situations that will hopefully help you progress with your dog at home. Welcome back to Duck Dogs, everybody. I am your host, Josh Miller, and I'm gonna do the partners different than every time. So I have two guests in here with me. I have Mr. Brett Ayers.
Hello.
And I have Mr. Lewis McNeil.
Howdy.
It's the best American accent he's had. So before we get going, we do have to thank sponsors, but we're going to do this a little differently. Okay, Brett, give me like a short, like very short. Okay, Yukonuba.
Wow, you're putting me on the spot.
I know I am.
No,
I know.
I like it. Yukonuba, it's the food that we feed at the kennel every day to keep our dogs going 100% in the field.
Nice. Kent Cartridge.
Me again. Mm-hmm. When's he gonna do one?
Well, he doesn't know these companies.
I do.
Do you really?
I saw.
Okay. Well, you get the next one then.
Oh.
Kent Cartridge. It's the ammo of choice in the field when we're hunting, and we also use field blanks here at the kennel.
Okay.
I don't know the extra bit that goes after it, but I'll know what it is.
You're going to have to talk way slower for anyone to understand
right.
what you just said. I understood it, but I also understand you enough to know that no one else understood it. All right, Mr. Know-It-All. Lucky Duck.
Your premium duck decoy in the Midwest.
Not bad. Not bad. All right, Lewis, this one's for you too. Sitka.
Oh, your number one go-to outdoor gear
I like it.
for rugged terrain.
Not bad.
Yeah, that's great.
Brett, Gun Dog Supply.
That's your one-stop shop for all your gun dog training.
You don't have to
support.
copy what I say. Like,
Okay.
what's your thought of Gun Dog Supply?
Yeah, I mean, that's the only place that I shop. Rob and Steve are superb people, and that's where I go to buy all my dog training supplies.
Mm-hmm. All right, Lewis, last but not least,
Oh, no.
Retriever Roadmap.
Your one-stop shop for your retrieving dog needs. Cover everything.
It's good.
You name it.
That's right. Good. Yeah, thank you to all of our partners that make this this show possible. Okay, so with these two, to be honest with you, it's awesome to have new faces in the studio, because it's way more entertaining than sitting here staring at the wall. Talk to myself. Two, about the only person I can pull away to do any kind of work right now is Whitney, because she doesn't have puppies. Because Eric, Dave, and Zach at the kennel are go. Obviously, Brett, you're remote. Lewis is very remote. So it's just nice to have some fresh faces in there. So let's talk a little bit first about why you guys are in town. So let's talk about Strike Force Weekend. So Strike Force Weekend was for Retriever Roadmap. It's just an event that we put on for all of the members. They can come train. Lewis is here. I'm here. This year we had Carlos here. We'll talk about him a little bit. And just kind of got to spend time with people in the field. And so what I want to do is spend a little time around, let's just say, like you're whether you're a Retriever Roadmap member or not, it doesn't matter. But if you were not there, what are the kind of things that you missed? And I think that there's some really cool nuggets that I took away. I'd like to see if you took away any nuggets as far as like things you saw, tips you were able to give. Like, were there any aha moments that were had? And hopefully, to somebody listening, that they could take that home and apply it to with their own dog. But it was a really cool weekend. The one thing that I think stands out to me is just how many great people are a part of that community. But just in the dogs in general, I think about every single person there, which was well over 100 people. They all are there because of the dogs. I think it's a really special thing as you kind of look at that. Lewis, no one there would ever know who you were if it wasn't for the dogs. You probably would know who Brett and I were,
exactly.
and then to take that another step further, the relationships that are had, from that and the friendship. So it's really a cool deal. Weather was rough as far as like we were dodging the rain, we were dodging forecasting. First day they said it was going to be 4.5 inches of rain and thunderstorms, and ended up hardly getting any rain and no thunderstorms. But I think we made the most of it and made it work, and had some really cool presenters too. So first let's kind of kick it off. So first, Lewis, was there anything that stood out to you as far as you're watching all these people come through, handle their dogs? Now, you have a very different perspective, right? Because how you're handling overseas is quite different oftentimes. So anything stood out to you?
The probably the biggest thing that I learned for the weekend was what Carlos was doing, which was the patience line. I thought that was an absolutely outstanding idea. Usually when we're training a pack of dogs, you could spend half an hour trying to get the one dog to sit and stay, whereas with the patience line, you can put them in, not to worry about them, just let them settle at their own speed. I thought that was a brilliant idea. We did a lot of, through the rain, we did a lot of exercises. A lot of people didn't want to run their dogs in the rain. Surprised about that. If you're going to train, always train in the rain as well, because it's completely different for another dog. So if you purely train in the sun, dry days, the dog will only learn to pick dummies game in dry days. So if you're out in a hunt and it's pissing with rain, you're really going to struggle to pick birds. They're not know how to work the rain. My dogs are very, very good in the rain.
they better
They're
be
amazing.
They better be. It rains every day.
Boris is outstanding in that. But yeah, that was good. And we added a really kind of awkward handling exercise in the first day. Kind of caught a lot of people out. It was just something different, just to try and catch dogs out. But I think a lot of folk took something from it, just to see where their dog's at and things. But I thought it went really well.
Yeah, so two things I want to just kind of key in a little bit off of what you said. So Carlos. So first off, I think Brett, haven't I had Carlos on the show?
Yes,
I think just recently even. Yep. So Carlos has become a very good friend of mine. He's a professional trainer out on the East Coast, and we brought him in as always trying to add on to what we're offering people to see, and he does such a great job at the behavioral side of things, and so he of course has gun dogs, he trains retrievers, but there's very few people, I would say specifically in the gun dog world, at least here in the States, that can honestly say that they are the experts in the behavioral side of things, right? So if you have a dog that's being anxious, that has anxiety, that has aggression, that has all these these things that people struggle with, Carlos is very, very good at that. And so when he came in, the patience line that Lewis was referencing, so I actually learned that from a guy named Rick Smith, and I used to do a lot of, I couldn't afford to attend Rick's seminar, so Rick let me come for free if I helped him get all this stuff ready and do all that. And he was a great mentor of mine, still to this day. He's just a big person in my life. And what's cool about that is so we called it the chain gang. The patience line is a way nicer way of that terminology, but what the idea is that you have a long line that you can put anywhere from you could have a 2 dog, you could have a 10 dog, you have anything in between setup, and the dog, I think it is, there's an actual length, and I should have asked Carlos this, but I think it's like 16 inches or something like that. And so the line is on the ground. So think of the line stretched out as a cable. So the cable is stretched out on the ground. You stake it in on both sides. You have to stake it in well to the ground. And then the dogs are clipped to little leashes that are attached to that line across, so if it's I used to know all this. I don't, because I haven't used one in quite a while. But the dogs are spaced apart to where they can't touch each other. And they only have, I think it's, like I said, I think it's like 14 or 16 inches. And so the dogs can't walk around, they can't move, they have to really just sit there and be patient. And if they don't, if they're lunging, if they're jumping, if they're being anxious, there's always going to be pressure that is put on that collar, right? Because they're going to move, and they are making the correction. Because they move, there's an immediate correction because that cable is consistent. And it's amazing how you can take an anxious dog, and over time, the dog teaches itself just to calm down. Just sit there, just lie down, just be patient. And Carlos has done a great job integrating that into his training, to where he'll take dogs and he'll stake them out in this manner, and the dogs have to watch the other dogs train in an honoring format. And if the dogs want to break, and if they want to be anxious and they want to lunge and they want to do those things, that they're correcting themselves. And I think it's a really cool thing, and especially if you've never seen that before. Quite frankly, it's probably something that I should incorporate into my training, more regularly. We do a lot of one-on-one or two-on-one. We're honoring with one, running one, but we don't do a lot of the group type settings like that. I think it's a great idea.
Yeah, definitely. I'm definitely going to get it when I come over to Scotland. I'm 100%, especially with the pack of dogs.
Yeah,
especially with some young dogs, like year-olds. It's perfect for them just to switch off and watch what's going on.
Yeah, so that was the first thing. There was one other thing that you touched on that I wanted to dig into as you were going through that. I don't think it was the training in the rain, although that was a pretty big topic that we had. Gonna miss it. There's something else. It'll hit me when we come to it. But that patience line, I think, is a really cool thing that anyone could incorporate. You don't have to have a 10-dog setup. You can have a 2-dog or 1 dog. And I think Rob is not going to be happy with me if I misinterpret this. So don't take this to the bank, and don't call Gun Dog Supply if you don't see it. But I think they have, I don't know if you can make your own, but I think they have different, like a 3-dog, a 5-dog, a 10-dog setup, right?
Single dog, yep.
Yeah. Is there a single dog?
Yep.
Okay, that's what I didn't want to jump into. I didn't want to say there was a single dog and then there wasn't. Yep. But I mean, how great would that be? You think about you go to, it doesn't have to be training, right? You go to the T-ball game, right? You go to the family reunion, whatever it is, and you stake the dog out and just make them be steady, make them be calm, I think it's even better than a place board, because the dog doesn't have a choice. They have to sit down, especially if you have a dog that is dealing with that anxiousness.
Yeah, to elaborate on that a little bit, just from my experience when I walked over there, I kind of floated around, was taking some photos, and I walked over there, and he obviously had, I forget, there was 10 dogs lined up or whatever it was, and there was one dog that was barking, and it barked the whole time. The whole time Carlos was talking, the dog was a little vocal. So he had that guy come up, and just working through the everything that he did with that dog. After a time, that guy stepped back in line with everybody else, because the owners were, let's say, 15 feet away from the dogs. And after Carlos got done working with him, the guy backed up in the line, and the dog never said another word. Then the other interest was a dog that was jumpy, and Carlos had the owner come up, and right away the dog's jumping. And Carlos worked through it with him to keep him steady. And what was cool about it was, at the end, that dog, instead of jumping, was actually sitting, and so had replaced his jump to a sit. So it was cool to see that Carlos work through that with those guys.
Yeah, and I think naturally there's going to be somebody out there that's like, well, if you're a trainer, that's what you should do.
Sure.
And although I do think that there is an extent of that, there's something to be said about watching someone that's truly an expert at what they do, right? So, like, I love watching trainers train, but when you start looking at, like, what are they really, really good at? Like, Carlos is really, really good at the behavioral stuff, like really sharp, on point, on cue. And then the next level of this is he can communicate it with the owner. And that's the one thing that a lot of trainers are naturally missing, right? A lot of people that are great with animals, doesn't matter what animal it is, they're not necessarily great with the people side of it. And he's very talented, so I like that. So I thought of what it was. So it was the new drills, the new handling drills, the new things you threw at it. So I want to talk about that a little bit, because I feel that I think the reason people love that so much, when you're doing those drills, is because we get so rutted up in the same drills, the same setups, the same, and of course there's always the thought, and I think this is where a lot of people get frustrated sometimes, is like, you have to do it this way or your dog's not going to be successful. You have to do it like this, in this order, in this way. And we all know that that's not the case. But when you come in, you're like, hey, we're going to do this handling drill like this. Talk through that a little bit.
Yeah, it's just something completely different here. A lot of people were saying, you're going to give them a right hand off a mark, leave the mark, go for a blind right-handed at 90 degrees. A lot of people were saying that it's going to damage their blind handle back, like running power and back. But
so there's a mark, you send on the mark,
straight
you
ahead, stop, and then give them a right hand 90 degrees or left hand 90 degrees off the mark. Leave the mark to a blind, and it's just basically a pure handling exercise. It's all what it is. Make sure the dog is listening to you and moving. So a lot of people were saying that, I'm not wanting to do that. Well, not a lot, but a few. That it's going to damage their blind handling back, but it will probably do the opposite thing and actually improve. So if we talked a lot about like muscle memory. So if you can get the dog going right hand off of a mark, going 60, 70, 100 yards, if you do that consistently with a left and right hand handle, when you send them back at angles, they'll just instinctively run 100 odd yards. So you're increasing the run that they're going to do back, if that makes sense. But it was really interesting to see. A lot of people were giving their dogs left or right hands and they're always peeling back. It's just because you do so much back handles, back left, back rights. And there was a lot of people saying, well, my dog's trained to run back, But I don't see any problem in the dog giving a left or right overs. Shooting situations, how many times you've been out in a duck and somebody shoots a runner 50 yards to the right of it, and unless you shoot over the dog, but leave that blind, we're going that mark, we're going for a runner here that's trying to dive, It's more like a real hunting scenario, I think, rather than just running 300 or 400, 200 yard blinds.
Yeah.
It's more like a kind of shooting scenario situation.
Yeah, and I would say that's absolutely applicable here because, a lot of times, just think from a waterfall, situation where the dog is sitting steady at your side or in a blind or in a dog box or on a tree stand, wherever you are. And when you're shooting, that dog is not necessarily right at your side. So I can tell you for a fact, when we hunt down in Arkansas and we're in these blinds and, it's a 8 to 10 man blind, and there's 2 dog boxes on the sides where the dogs go in and they look out the front, there's not a point, like unless I literally crawl down and crawl out the window and put my hand down and try to direct them, you're just saying their name and they're going after so if they go and they're looking at one that's belly up, and like you're saying, there's a cripple swimming away and we're worried about, hey, this one's going to dive, it's going to get away, we need to pick this one up first, right? Yeah, in this case, you need to be able to stop and handle off of that mark, that you were going to. And oftentimes in that, it's not going to be just in a straight back manner. Yep. I've had a lot of conversations with, one really good friend of mine. And you always go round and round about, because I do a ton of hunting, and he does a ton of field trialing and testing at high level. And we just have these conversations, right? So like for him, he's like, his opinion, and which is fine, but his opinion is that a dog should never take an overcast. If you give an overcast, it should be a right over would be a right angle back, is basically what it is, right? The dog should always be driving back. You're just telling him which way to drive back. And for what he's doing, for sure, right? Like I can see that. But for hunting, there are so many times. I'm thinking of a time in particular where dog's going to the spot of the fall. I'm watching the dog go out there, and then all of a sudden, 30 to 40 yards to the right, this cripple pops up and is swimming, right? Well, I need to be able to stop him and give him a right overcast and have him carry that overcast to where he has to go.
We do that a lot in Scotland. It's more for driven shooting, like kind of reeds, rashes, there's guns in front, birds get shot in front, and on the way out to a mark or something like that, a bird gets up, gets alive and starts running, stop, get it right-handed or left, right onto this bird. We do that. I would at least do that 6 or 7 times a day. But that, again, that's shooting scenarios. Something else that popped into my head that I'm really, really surprised that not a lot of people do here is have a hunt command. Like saying in shooting situations, especially with ducks and things, and if you're on like beans or something or heavier cover, can really like a nice teal tucked in right under a log or something. I mean, a lot of the handlers really don't have a hunt command. So in some of the situations that we had at the weekend, I would get a mark, and when the mark is out, turn the dog around. This is our advanced, and then get the dummy thrower to go and pick up the mark so that there's nothing there, and just try and get the dogs to hold the area for more than a minute. And the dogs really struggled, just because there's no scent. The dog doesn't have a command. Mm-hmm. So like in a shooting situation, there's a snipe or a teal buried in. You're 150 yards. I mean, you've really got no chance of picking it. Mm-hmm. Do you know what I mean? Or if you're unsure where the fall is, you've seen it come over a hedge. It could be 100, it could be 50, it could be 200 yards, whereas you want the dog to start hunting for itself rather than just handle it all the time. I really like a dog out in one cast, stop, there. It just does its thing until it hits scent, starts picking, and it gets onto the bird. But everyone shoots here, and I'm surprised that's not a bigger thing than it is.
Yeah, the philosophy that we find here is that when you handle right to the bird or right to the stick or right to the dummy, whatever you're doing, right? So you have to handle right to it. And I do understand it from a control standpoint. You're showing off the control, you're showing that the dog is compliant with everything you're asking him to do. But again, from a hunting scenario, how often do you actually know where that bird is? Like, just close your eyes, put yourself in your hunting scenario, your hunting situation. Whether it's field in Wisconsin to prairies of North Dakota to Arkansas down in the timber. There are often times that after a rain out, you knock down 3, 4, 5 birds. You don't know where all those birds are. You know the general idea, but you don't know where all those birds are. And then on the flip side of it, then if you're running the only dog and your buddy's like, hey, I got one down over here, and you get over there and I think he's over here in this area, like, you can't handle the dog right to it because you don't even know where it is, right? Mm-hmm. So having a hunt whistle, which is something I will say a couple people had it, and they've been working, and they did a really nice job with it, right? And it's something that we've talked a lot about because I use it a lot because I want my dog to get to that spot, give them that hunt command, and then they hunt in that area. And one thing that I did it was interesting because of weather and some change in plans we had to make. We actually split up, we split all the dogs into groups naturally, right? So like the puppy foundation dogs were one, intermediate I think took up 2 classes, then we had 2 groups, then we had 2 groups of advanced. And because of numbers, we split up the puppy and foundation into both the advanced groups. And what was cool about it to me was, all right, we're going to go run the puppies, which some of these puppies were really cool.
Oh, they're flying.
Really nice little puppies. And they'd get off and they'd get over to an area and they'd hunt in that area, right? And it took them maybe 10, 15, 20 seconds, some more, but they were successful. They got to that spot and they just hunted, right? And my message to the advanced dogs that came up after that, or the advanced dog handlers, of course, is be careful about overhandling. Like, again, 1, this is training. It doesn't have to look perfect, right? And then 2, if your dog misses the fall, like, I'm not saying let him overrun it by 40 yards, but I'm saying, like, if he drops down, he's in the area he's hunting, I see too many people panic after a couple seconds, like, oh, I need to handle him. Well, the dog's doing what he's bred to do. Break down, use his nose, stay in the area, find the bird, go be successful. It doesn't have to be in a matter of 2-3 seconds. And it was really interesting. Like, I challenged the advanced handlers, if it is a mark, let the dog do it. Like, if this is a marking drill, the dog should go mark and should not need your handle, theoretically, right, to get there. And it was just really interesting to me how that translation happened.
One funny thing that came up with my advanced class was I was saying about the hunt command. A lot, like 2 or 3 people says we don't want the dogs hunting on the way out for a blind, like putting the head down. But then I counteracted with that with it'll actually stop the dog hunting, because if you teach the dog to hunt when I want you to hunt, the dog will learn that I've just to run at this point. Do you know what I mean? It's quite an unusual one because
like you want them to hunt, but hunt when I tell you to.
When you're telling me to, so they know when they have to hunt. So it'll stop them hunting on the way out, if that makes sense. It's quite an unusual way to describe it, but everyone kind of doesn't put. I feel a lot of people don't put the hunt whistle on them because they're scared it's going to rake on the way out. Just put the nose down, hunt. Whereas if you teach your dog to run and then start hunting, the dog will know when he's meant to hunt. So it'll actually stop them from hunting on the way out, if that makes sense. Because the dog's knowing what he's to do. I find that quite unusual. It's just the way people interpret things. They kind of maybe take it the wrong way, and then they're not training to suit. But that was quite an eye opener. That was quite interesting.
Yeah, one that I found interesting is when we did the big group together, and you put one of the blinds so that there were big round bales. We were in a big hayfield. It had just been harvested, but the bales were still in the field. And Lewis went and he put the blind bumper. Literally, think about the bale sitting on the ground and how it kind of comes around, to kind of that narrow point in the bottom, but how the bale rounds, right? Like that's kind of a tight area to get down there. And Lewis put a bumper down in that crevice and kind of like pushed it in there. And I was like, well, what are you doing on this? And he's like, if you shot a bird and it was running, wouldn't it run to a spot like this and bury in? I was like, oh, yeah. Again, just different ways that you're thinking about training, than we are. I think it's really interesting.
I've noticed we kind of train more to the shooting scenario more than anything, and it's more like testing things here are more kind of less to the hunting scenario. Now it's kind of getting further away from the shooting. I mean, that under the hay bale is just an example of some of the things we do. We do a lot down rabbit holes as well. So we'll do a shot scent and then drag a dummy into a rabbit hole. Like that's just purely a shoot day. You shoot a rabbit at the back end. By the time the dog gets to it, it's down the hole, and the dog needs to work out, take the line, get its head down the hole, and get it out. And that's literally what we train for. Because that's dinner at the end of the day. You don't want. I'd rather eat it than a fox. So, and again, it's just dispatching wounded game. But we're more rounded to shooting. I think the shooting scenarios. And we train for it. Like our trials and tests are around shooting scenarios, rather than the hunt tests here are like running ridiculously long blinds and things and technical in waters and things like that you're not really going to come across in everyday shooting. You will at some point, but not in everyday shooting situations. But the rabbit one's quite a good one. I'll maybe do that next year.
Yeah, right. Well, we don't have as many rabbits as you have.
If you see me with a spade next year, you'll be worried.
Oh gosh, Brett, anything stand out to you?
Obedience.
Yeah,
I thought this is our third strike force. We had Wisconsin last year, Missouri this spring, and now this Wisconsin here in June. And you could tell that we've been preaching obedience over the course of probably since last year. And you can tell that a lot of people took that to heart.
I couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
It was a significant difference from last year. I remember us sitting down last year talking about how disappointed we were in the obedience.
Yes.
And I think this year was very different.
Yep. And that conversation came up like through the private community of Retriever Roadmap a lot. And there was a lot of challenges, and a lot of people took those challenges to heart. And it really showed. And it was really fun to see those dogs more disciplined, more obedient in the field this year than versus in the past. So
Yeah, no doubt.
That was a big takeaway. But yeah, I mean, like you said, those young puppies, there was a lot of cool young puppies that have a ton of potential that are fun to watch. And just the adversity that we were put in, and everybody rolling with the punches. And even we did have some rain Friday afternoon, and everybody stuck it out. And then the last hour of our Saturday, we got dumped on. But even then, as we were tearing things down, people were still running the drills, and it just shows the dedication and obviously just coming together as a community. A ton of fun. So
yeah, for sure. I'm gonna piggyback off your obedience thing a little bit. I'm gonna talk about so this year I really trying to get some new faces, new experiences. Brought a few people in. One of the people that I was able to bring in is Officer Josh Stenseth, and Josh is a national champion canine handler. He brought his deputy that works for him, is kind of learning under him and Jordan, and I thought they both did a fantastic job. It was really fun to see those dogs, right, and see like, hey, here's someone that is also looking for a high level of training, but different dogs, different expectations, different, everything, right? accept the obedience.
Right.
Like obedience was still like he kept talking about. I can't remember how many times he said, without obedience you don't have anything. Obedience is the foundation of everything. Obedience is the utmost importance. But you see those dogs be obedient, that is a different level of obedience.
Oh, aye.
I mean, that was above and beyond. And I mean, to everything, to the way sit down, come, like the heels were like right there, like literally everything, right? And like I'm sitting there watching this thing, and I'm always trying to be open-minded. No matter what trainer I'm around, no matter what dog situation, I'm always trying to be open-minded. I'm thinking I'm kind of like challenging myself and my thoughts. And like first off, I mean, you just don't see gun dogs this often be this obedient, right? I mean, now of course they need it, right? As we learned from a liability and lawsuit standpoint, but then also from a safety standpoint. Obviously, they're going to be put in dangerous situations. They are going to lean on these canines to protect them, as in the officers, in dangerous situations. So there's a necessity for them to be that. But at the same time, they're just. I just like I kind of question like why not? Like why can't our dogs why don't we see gun dogs be this obedient and this under control? And one of the things that I thought was interesting was that they never really go away from giving the dog treats. And I've been really adamant about hey, like I'm like not a treat trainer. Like I'll use treats up to that certain point in puppyhood, and then we get away from it because the reward is the work and the reward. Like I don't like one thing I challenge myself with like I don't like do I bail out of treats too early, right? Like should I be using treats longer, more often? And I do think that there's a line. I do think there's a difference, right? Because like naturally, I think especially if you're listening to this and you didn't get the opportunity to see this firsthand, you'd go, well, our gun dogs are different, right? Because our gun dogs, they want to go work and they want to go retrieve. These males want to go work.
Yeah.
I mean, they want to go on that bite. They want to go, and the bite. What I thought was so interesting is it's not an aggressive thing. It's like it's almost like a play thing to them. Like that's what you'll want to. That is their retrieve. Is that, and so I just don't know if it's that incredibly different.
I've actually got a Mal. You've met her, we Abs.
Abby.
I do from training labs full time and having a Mallee. How different the animals are. Like Abby is the most driven dog I have ever seen in my life, and most 99% of it is natural with Abby. I mean, she'll walk between the legs, garden, everything's just completely natural. Biting, arm biting is absolutely natural to her. Never trained her. She just does it purely herself. She knows release, like how she learned that, I'll never know. It's just the kind of inner. But the retrieving instinct of her is incredible. But I reckon she'd probably be the hardest going dog for retrieving I've ever seen. Nothing will stop her. A brick wall, she'd run through it. I would say my hardest going dog that I've ever trained, she would be double that. But I mean, if the dogs we seen the other day were just so well schooled and so behaved. The dogs are that driven. It's incredible to watch. But I do think a lot of it is natural with Mallees, to be honest. A lot of it's in them, especially the bite work. You can just see them; they just love it.
Yeah. Well, and you see those dogs. One, the power that they go with on those bites, incredible. But then for them to be that engaged, and then with one word, boom, down. They release. They're laying on the ground. They're looking up at them. Right. You see that, or you see the send them and they're on a full sprint, and one word, they're like skidding on the ground because they're trying to lay down so fast. Again, going to what they want more than anything in this world to go do, and then boom, right down. It just like it made me sit there and think and go, I should never have a dog blow off a whistle again in my life. Right. I mean, it's just like, oh my gosh. Yep. But that was something that I thought about. The treat thing, I thought it was interesting how long they used those treats. And they didn't give like a time, but I mean, I can't remember not the big, they had two dogs there, the smaller one, like they were still using treats with that dog. I can't remember. I think he said they were like 3 years old or something like that.
3 or 4, yeah. Mallees are actually very animated as well, like, in fairness to them. Like, everything's over the top, completely over the top. Like, I mean, you've seen Abby, but her stopping and the whistling thing is absolutely unbelievably animated. They can almost put it on, they're that funny, but it's just the way they are. It's the breed of them.
I just think it's really neat. I think it's
Yes,
a
incredible.
completely different deal. So let's kind of transfer over to probably my biggest disappointment of the weekend was that Dr. Spoo couldn't make it. So in the scramble of changing times and changing the days up and because of weather, Dr. Spoo had called me on Friday morning. He was supposed to be presenting Friday afternoon and said that he had been in his basement for over 2 hours, hand scooping water out of his basement as the house had flooded. They had so much water, and they're trying to get a pump in. He's just like, I can't leave my family, like this, which absolutely understandable, right? So like, no issue, no problem, totally get it. But there were a lot of topics that I wanted to go over with him. And he was going to have a long time to do it. He was going to go over field first aid. He was going to go over nutrition. He was going to go over, like, one of the big questions continues to be spay and neuter, like when to, when not to. There were just a lot of things that were going to come up, and probably my biggest disappointment. But through the conversation, this is just something I want to, just poke, with you on a little bit, Lewis, because we, through us talking about how we wish he was here, the topic came up on the spay and neuter side of things, and you have worked with was it a doctor out of France?
Yeah, neurologist and a bone specialist. Yeah,
So a neurologist and bone specialist out of France, and there was just something in now where I'm going to just full disclosure, we are not veterinarians, right? We are not trained professionals, but this was a really interesting thing that I'd love to take this idea and dig into it with Spoo at some point. But like, tell us a little bit about what you learned from him.
It's hard to explain, but I mean, I'll try my best and as slow as I can. But I mean, the dogs that are getting neutered very young, say 6-7 months, the top of the game really are against that. They reckon you should be at least a year, 2 years old, or 18 months old before they get spayed. The reason is the body's still completely developing from all the hormones and things like that. So there isn't really enough testing to prove it, because if we get the dog spayed at 6 months old, you're never ever going to get the hips and elbows tested to see how the dogs are, because they're never going to be bred from. So 99% you don't. So you're only testing dogs that haven't been spayed, down the line to obviously breed from them, because otherwise there isn't much point in breeding from them, to spaying them. So we should really be testing the dogs that are spayed at 6 months old or whatever, checking out their bone density, checking out all their hips and elbows, and I bet you the probability that they'll be really bad is because the dog's been spayed so young. But of course people don't tell you that, what I mean? But I thought it was a really interesting point.
Yeah, I think it's an incredibly interesting point, because I had never thought of it. Okay, so like, you're not going to test the dogs get spayed or neutered early on, because those people really don't ever have a reason to go get the testing done. So why would you spend the money? Why would you go do all this stuff? Unless there's something, majorly wrong that they're going to try to find out. But most of them are never going to be tested. So, when you think about the sample size of the dogs you're testing, you're only testing the dogs that aren't spayed or neutered, right? They're intact.
Sense. Yeah, it's dropping all the ratios right down. So really, we should be testing all the spayed dogs. And I bet you if we did, at a year old, do the hips and elbows, you would see a trend. That the dogs that are spayed are struggling with their bone density, their hips and elbows. They aren't properly developing. I think it would be even a bigger one in males. They're not getting testosterone, they're not getting the muscle build, their bones aren't developing properly. I think it's something we should really be doing to test, just to do a kind of over blanket to see. But again, there's so much variables with dogs. Some people run dogs really hard all the time. There's different parts of the country. There's different feeding. There's so much variables, but it would just be really interesting to see, what the thought would be. But yeah, I don't know how we could, if you could ever do that.
Right. I just think it's an interesting thought of, again, just challenging, the why behind it. Like, okay, well, we think we have our sample size, but we're completely neglecting, the portion that we're trying to really test against, right? Like, is it right or is it wrong? And I think what you had said too is the doctor that you were working with, he was big on bone density as far as a repercussion for spaying and neutering early, right?
Yeah, so he was doing a lot of testing at the time. This was a year ago, and he was testing dogs. It was male dogs that had the snip and not had the snip, and the bone density was insanely drastically changing from a year old to 18 months, and not only that, but muscle mass and just how they develop. But yeah, I mean, the people that I've spoke to that are the top in the game, top in the country, top in Europe, really, everyone's all said at least 18 months, just to cover yourself, so the dog's actually had a few seasons, it's got that testosterone, it's going, rather than just cutting it short and going at 6 months. You'd rather actually let the dog do what's natural to it, and then rather than take the risk at 6 months, because what's the risk? It's not too much of a problem. If it's for like health reasons, fair enough, different thing altogether. But it's interesting because you should really be taking note for the guys that are in the front line, that are doing all the research, all the front line stuff, rather than people that are, not saying vets aren't thinking, but that aren't on the same level as the guys. They're not testing the same things, but I just found that really interesting.
Yeah,
I got asked that a lot at the weekend. What age would you recommend to spay? And someone's saying like 5 months, 6 months. I'm thinking, it's insane, It's just a baby,
yeah. Well, I think the hard thing, at least here, I can't speak about overseas, but here, what I've been told is a lot of vets are taught that it's pro spay and neuter early in life, because 99% of the people that you're going to be working with aren't responsible dog owners, and we don't want strays, we don't want these oops litters, we don't want the animal shelters filling up with all these dogs that are unwanted. And I do understand that, but I also feel like if you're going to say that that's 99%, then we're probably the 1%, right?
Yeah.
Like, you, I, Brett, anyone that's listening to this that's looking for your dog to be an athlete. And I mean, how can your dog ever develop both physically and mentally, right? Because those hormones obviously have a lot to do with brain development as well.
Yep.
And and I shouldn't even say that because, again, I'm not a vet, right? But, like, again, just what I've been told. It is something that I do think is really worth. I wish there was more of a deep dive into this. And this is the kind of stuff that I was really hoping that Dr. Spoo is going to be able to do. And he will. Like, I know that it bothered him for not being able to come to. And we'll find a time for him to get there. But I just think it's a really interesting topic.
Everyone's got their own opinions and things, but I just like to go with people with pure evidence, and if they're coming out with all this evidence, especially in France, I mean, they're cutting edge with it, and it makes sense. Do you know what I mean? They're like, you can talk all day you want, but the evidence doesn't lie at the end of the day. But I just found it really interesting.
Yeah. So last thing I want to go over with you is, you mentioned the handling differences that are here versus overseas, and some of it I don't think applies too much with what I have, what we have going on here. But some of it I do feel like does, and some of it I'm going to challenge myself to kind of think more on and see. So, can you kind of run through some of the handling differences that you've seen here?
Yeah, we handle with left and right. So our left is away, our right's get on, or what my win is. So we use different commands for left and rights, and a different command for back.
And we just go over.
You over, yeah. So it proved my point when we were at that on Saturday. The dogs are standing in front of 50 people. They can't make the person out. Somebody's just shouting over. The dog just goes one way or the other. It's just a 50-50 chance. It doesn't see the person, doesn't know what way we're going. So
because these dogs, when they'd hear that whistle sit, there might be 50, 60 people sitting in chairs or standing under the tents, and they're supposed to somehow pick out
a handle,
the handler from the one, right?
Whereas, like, with a British dog that's trained left and right, at least if they can't see the person, your handler, at least they've got the verbal, and they go, oh, there we go, left hand, I'll go left. So you've got that extra wee bit just to help. I mean, it doesn't hurt anyone. Do you know what I mean? You've always got that. Or you could be in a blind, full camo, dog can't see you. At least you've got another extra wee kind of handle in the back pocket, I mean, Boris is over. He's doing that pretty good. He's not really did it in 6 or 7 months, but he's still doing it quite sharp. And we just run up and down. We can handle left, right, completely blind with our hands. But I just think it's a good wee thing to work on, especially again in shooting scenarios. The dog can't see you, or he's in a wood. You try to get him left-handed in a wood and you can't see him. And people think, oh, that wouldn't ever work or things like that. I mean, you just need to look at the British Collies for sheep work. They'll handle a dog at 400 yards with 2 whistles. Give it 2 toots, it goes left, 1 toot, it goes right. You know, and I feel it's very helpful in a shooting situation. I think a lot of folk are missing it, to be honest, but I think it's just that ingrained here that nobody really likes change.
No,
to be
for
honest.
sure.
100%.
For sure. I mean, shoot, I'd say I'm in that boat. You know, I've gone over my whole life just because that's what we've done. And when I watched you, especially, what's really cool, and I wish we had a video of this we could share with everybody, but you know, when Lewis was handling Boris, and Boris is a dog that Lewis had sent over here, had been about 6 months ago now. It was about Christmas time, just after Christmas, somewhere in there. And you know, he was out on a blind, and what I feel like was so impressive about Boris is that, you know, Boris has spent the last 6 months, you know, changing over to my verbiage, my terminology, and then Lewis stepped in. He handled it pretty well.
Always,
like maybe a little rusty, but
just
pretty
a bit
well.
rusty. But I mean,
but he could literally stand there, and you know, use get on or away, and he would go left or right, and Lewis never even had to use his hands. You know, tweet. He turned around and looked, and he just said, "Get on." Took a cast, right? And so it was really interesting. And then, you know, too, when you talk about, you know, well, people might say it's not applicable here. I mean, even training today, like we were pushing into up on top of this hill that had some cover on it. There were numerous times we stopped dogs, and the grass stopped moving, but we couldn't see them and they couldn't see us, right? But in this case, you could tell Boris which way you wanted to go. He'd go there.
Yep. I mean, we do a lot of when they get really advanced, like Boris's level, kind of the top end levels, we'll put them actually over a hill completely blind, and we'll have someone standing on the hill, and then somebody just stands with a thumb up, stop, he stopped, shout, he's left, he shout away, he goes left, he keeps his thumb up. You know, you can actually completely go completely out of sight, over a hill, out of way, and it's amazing the control you can have on a dog with that, but it makes things a lot easier. And as we're saying at the Strike Force, if the dog can't see you, no matter what distance or there's things behind you or something, it just gives you that wee bit of an edge, you know, just to help out. But it's interesting to do. It's just another way of training, just completely different.
Yeah. I think the hardest part for me would be if I decide, okay, I'm going to start doing it this way, is retraining me.
Yeah. And it does get ingrained. It's just a habit. It just becomes a habit. But Boris is doing it really well, and he's not did that in 6 months. I mean, you wouldn't have been doing it with him. And he's picked it up within a day. Do you know what I mean? It's like as if he's been doing it.
Pretty impressive.
Yeah, it's really cool. I thought he would have forgotten it, but he's bang on, you know. But it just shows you that it sticks with him, you know.
What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think it's super interesting. I was actually thinking with my little pup Ash of changing up, because I'm the same way. I've always been ingrained to do one thing one way, and just watching them. Even, correct me if I'm wrong, even like your hand signals, when you do give a hand signal, usually you blow a whistle, you know, we stop, give them a target, then give them an over. You're already giving them that signal when they turn around to look at you.
Yeah, so I don't I try and not move, to be honest. Like, I don't try and do a movement. It's completely different though. Now I think personally, the dogs, if you move your hand, it actually affects the dog worse in a way. I'd actually have my hand out, so the dog can see you clear as day. They know your hand's out. I try and not move much, and because we do a lot of left and rights that way and go on, like verbally. If you have your hand out and say away, they always know where you're going. You know what I mean? It helps a lot. But I like to have my hand out and then just say the verbal rather than moving, because some dogs like to jump the gun. As soon as you move slightly, they're off. Whereas I like to stand and then actually just say the command when I want them to go.
Right.
But it's just a different way of training. I mean, this only came into Scotland and Britain maybe 6-7 years ago. Kind of properly came about.
I mean, the using the away and get on instead of over.
Yeah,
so did they use over before?
No, just try to think what we used to say. So we used to just like get on both ways.
Okay. Yeah, because you say get over to get over a fence.
Get over, yeah.
Yeah, right.
And it was just get on. There's one or two people started doing aways and gets on, me being one of them, and then it just kind of took off. Now absolutely everyone does it. I would say 99%. We use get over as like we've got that many fences in Scotland that we actually use that for good for running blinds and things in trials. So we tell the dog to get over. The dog runs flat out looking for something to jump.
Right.
You know,
right.
It's quite a good wee hack, but we've got that many fences. We need to train it. Do you know what I mean?
That's why I really think it's great having him over here for other people to see that. It's just get a whole different perspective that we both have all the same goals, right? And how you can go different directions or different routes, so to speak, and achieve that. And that's what's super cool. There was a lot of comments of the get on, get out, away, and it's fun to watch. Like, just a whole different perspective of achieving the same goals.
Yeah.
Another thought that I had this morning, and this came from we have a guy named Peter that was picking up his pup Bill that just got through intermediate training. Bill's a cool little dog, and Pete's a great guy. And Pete lives out in Montana, and so we started talking about stuff, and he's like, man, I really hope that I can get a strike team going out there, because he wants to have a group to train with, and he's a roadmap member. Well, what's cool about that, here's what hit me. Okay, when he said that, he's like, because we could train for what we're gonna see, right? And I was like, well, what do you mean by that? And he's like, we hunt all these river systems, and you guys obviously don't have rivers like this to train in, right? So like, that's great. He's doing tech pond work, but what I need him to do is understand how to handle current, how to, with that, duck floating down, like, when you get a seasoned dog, like, they'll play the current and they'll pick that duck up the right way. And I'm just like, that's so interesting, right? Like, I don't know why it hadn't hit me in the face like that before, as far as like just being so blunt, like where are you going to train? Right. Like in that case, right? So he's like, we're going to go to our duck blind, and he's going to retrieve in the river over and over and over again, and understand how to fight that current, and how to, well, I'm sure guys in Arizona hunt different, and Texas hunt, and we always, I've always thought of that from a game to game standpoint, right? So like down in Texas is huge dove country, right? And then obviously North Dakota, you got your ducks, and in Arkansas, you got your ducks, and maybe like, out east, you got a bunch of geese, and like I regionally like that, like I've thought of it that way. But like when he said that, I was like, gosh, like how great of an opportunity for those guys to be able to do something like that. So so to your point, like you've got a bunch of fences, you guys said, like for us, we're not telling them to get over because we don't have fences
don't have
for them
fences,
to jump,
exactly.
right?
Yeah.
But so like that's what I mean, some of it doesn't really apply, but some of it really does. And that would be the real challenge to me, is could I go away from over, and could I do get on and away, and know, hey, when my dog is on a blind in Arkansas in the woods, and I'm seeing the splashes go, and then I see a duck way off to the left, that I stop him, the splashes stop, but I can't see him. I know he's waiting for a cast. He can't see me either. I could give him that verbiage and he'd go, right? I mean, it's really neat.
Yeah, I mean, we're not just talking young dogs here to do it. I mean, like, you can retrain an older dog, no bother. Like, it's actually easier if they know their left and rights, to be honest. If they know their over and overs, they pick it up so fast. I mean, it's just repetition, pure repetition. It's easier if the dog actually knows left and rights as well. You just slip that in, it's perfect.
I even think the terrain, like, I'm flat ground in Ohio, and honestly, when I come up here, my dogs struggle at first because it's so hilly, and that picture for them is a whole lot different than what it is from here to there. And there was a few dogs, that took a couple times, and they finally realized, oh, hey, I got to drive a little further. And even just the terrain is huge impact on.
That's his heli.
He's snickering about something.
That's his heli here.
Well,
you should come over here.
You should come to Ohio. You let a marble drop and it rolls forever.
I'll show you heli.
No, I think it's great stuff. I think there's a lot just to be said about the differences, and then too, just being open-minded. Again, like that's something I challenge myself with. Like, that's hard for me to look at those canines and be like, I wonder if we should tree train longer, because I've just been the reason I've been so against the tree training for long is because I feel like it's so easy for people to rely on it, and then all of a sudden you have a 1, 2, 3, 4-year-old dog that with treats, that's great, but and without diving too deep into it, I'd love to get Josh on here sometime, because he'd be an awesome guy to get in here and start talking about, because he's an instructor. He's naturally, he's really great at what he does. But he also talked about how they keep them hungry to eat, or I'm sorry, to train, as far as like they're not rewarding them for every time, but they're rewarding them for some. And then some of these dogs, I can't remember that dog's name, but like some of the dogs that were getting more treats in training, I think he said, correct me if I'm wrong, I think he said they don't feed them actual meals.
They don't feed them. They feed them during the day. It's Aries, I think.
Yeah.
Was it no Aries?
Yeah, Aries, yeah, Aries.
He actually feeds them during the day with the treats.
Yeah.
Yep.
So
It's wild, isn't it?
but think about how many people would struggle with that. Again, humanizing everything, right? So like, my dog needs to eat. My dog needs to eat dinner, needs to eat breakfast, whatever it is. Well, then all of a sudden the treats become less desirable because you're on a full belly, right? Like, I don't want to go run out and have a basket full of cheese curds if I've just ate a big dinner, right? That was like the most Wisconsin thing I could have picked. The most Wisconsin thing I could pick.
Cheese curds.
But you know what I mean? Like, because that is the meal. And that was really interesting, to me. So you'd have to handle it the right way. But it is really interesting.
Right.
It's an interesting thought.
Yeah. The other thing that between the canines and like they use a lot of hand signals from a distance, like down, boom, that dog went down. No verbiage, just a hand signal down. To come, they had a come hand signal, and I mean we're used to either whistle tweeting. There's no whistle involved whatsoever with those guys.
Yeah, and
from like you said, that the one bite demonstration they did, like I mean that dog, from a distance was just bite, having a like you said earlier, probably he's having a blast, right? But as soon as that one word, that dog releases and coming right back. I mean just incredible obedience.
Yeah, and I thought too the way they used their hand signals. I was trying to think of what it was. So I think arm up was sit.
Right.
I think
And
right arm was lay down.
Lay
Right.
down, yeah.
What was left arm?
No, I think it was just back up again for standing again.
Oh, that's
Oh, yeah,
right. You're
back
right.
up, standing,
So
yeah.
so right arm was sit. Left hand or left arm out was lay down.
Yep.
And
up was
arm up was you stand up. Yeah, it was pretty impressive.
Yeah.
to
And
watch.
from a distance, not not close. We're talking
Yeah.
from a distance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was really fun to watch. Yeah. But it really did. Like I sat there, I was like, everybody better be thinking the same thing. But like, your dog should never blow off a whistle again.
I know.
Yeah, and it all comes down to mindset. As duck hunters, we hear so much. Well, I just need my dog to go get my duck and bring it back. And we're obviously these guys. Those dogs protect them. Those dogs, they're total different. But so they have to be disciplined. But our mindset sometimes is just I think we get laxed on it.
Yeah,
that's right.
But watching that, a dog, like you said, a dog blowing off a whistle is like.
I know. Shocking, isn't it?
That's right. No, it is. It's good stuff. Well, hopefully, if you guys were listening to this, hopefully there's a nugget or two you could take away, from this and maybe help apply to your own training. But we're kind of in that midst of summer now. We're end of July or end of June, right? We're 4th of July is right around the corner. No, that doesn't mean much to you, Luis,
No,
but it means
not
a lot
really,
to us. But yeah, we're 3 months away.
Yep. It's right around the corner.
July,
Kicking
August,
off, yeah.
September.
Yep.
Right.
We start in the middle of August.
Yeah, so you're 2 months away.
Yeah, 2 months.
Pretty
Then
incredible.
The chaos begins.
Yeah,
The chaos begins.
that's right. Well, if you're still with us here, I hope you guys have a fantastic rest of your day, fantastic week. Make sure you get out and train and prepare for the season because it is, as we just talked about, right around the corner. So, hope you guys have a fantastic day. Lewis, thank you for being here.
Thanks for everything. It's been
everything
brilliant.
you do for the program and the community and everything else. So,
thank you.
Safe flight home, and we'll see you again soon.
Yeah, cheers. Thanks very much.
Thanks for listening. Be sure to follow us on Facebook and Instagram. Leave us a review on iTunes, and a special thank you to DUK because without them, we couldn't do what we do here, bringing this information to you.